All right, Rachel. A lot to get to. Obviously, let's start with Jimmy Butler though, and the end of the months-long standoff between Butler and the Miami Heat. A lot of moving parts to this deal with Golden State, but the gist of it is Butler is headed to the Warriors. Andrew Wiggins and a first-round pick will go to Miami. There could end up being 4 to 5 teams involved by the time it's official, but those are the key pieces of this deal. Butler agrees to a new 2-year deal that will pay him more than $100 million over the next 2 seasons. Golden State, they get its all-star. Miami, they get off the Jimmy Butler contract. I would say first, though, before we get into the who won, who lost, and who got better, the winner of this deal is Jimmy Butler. Like Jimmy Butler,
Yeah.
he doesn't get everything that he wanted because he's not in Phoenix. He didn't get the 2-year extension on top of the final year of his contract, but he winds up in a great situation in Golden State. He gets to play for a would-be contender, and he gets 1 more year tacked onto his contract. He's going to make $100 million over the next 2 seasons and take him all the way through the age 38 or age 37 year of his career. So right off the bat, Jimmy Butler, big winner. But what do you think of what this deal means for Miami and Golden State?
Well, look, they both almost got what they wanted or needed, right? I mean, you see Golden State, they needed some sort of thing. In fact, we saw them described as desperate in some of the reporting that led up to this deal. They obviously needed some sort of kick to get this last hump of the Steph Curry era into something more competitive than they have now. He's a veteran guy. He's obviously a playoff winner. If he is on the court, which I think is potentially one of the pitfalls of this deal for Golden State, just that, yes, Jimmy is fantastic when he's there and he is going to be on a mission. You and I know that. I think he'll be an off-ball trigger for Steph Curry. I think the fact that leading up to this, Steph was the only guy who could put the team on his back if he needed to and was obviously exhausted by doing that. And now on a given night, Jimmy could go put this team on his back if need be. I think that's a win for them. But Jimmy hasn't played more than 60, an average of 60 games the entire time he was in Miami. And then now he's 35, turning 36. And I am curious if come playoff time, which is when you need Jimmy Butler most, he will be there the whole time. We just will have to wait and see. On the Miami side, they had to get out of this deal, right? Is Andrew Wiggins and this pick the best they could have gotten? Probably not. If Jimmy had played a little more ball over the past month or two and been someone that more teams were interested in, I think that they probably could have gotten a little more for him. But given the situation, they almost got what they needed as well, which is probably as much as either of these teams can hope for. I'm just curious. You and I were talking earlier, and you said it made them, what, a pseudo contender or a potential contender in the West. I don't see this as a contender move for Golden State. I just feel like this is something to make the last part of the Steph Curry era competitive and fun and fun for Steph and fun for the fans to have someone like Jimmy to root for. He's great to have on your team. But given the rest of the West, do you really see Golden State as a competitor here, as a title competitor?
No, I don't think this moved them anywhere close to the top tier in the Western Conference. I mean, I can see it making them a little bit better. Butler has always been a player who performs better in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. And I think you can expect that to continue. I think having a proven playoff player on that roster is a plus. But I do have concerns about the way all this fits together because all of a sudden you have a rotation and certainly a starting lineup that is largely devoid of three-point shooting. I mean, Steph is arguably the greatest three-point shooter in NBA history. But next to Steph, you got Buddy Hield, who had a phenomenal month of November, shot 41% from 3. But then he dropped to 30.5% in December, 31.5% in January. Like, he's trending in the wrong direction. Draymond is a 35% shooter this season, but he's a low volume guy. He's not a presence from beyond the 3-point line. Jimmy Butler, same thing, a 36% 3-point shooter, but he doesn't shoot threes at all. Like, his entire
Right.
career, he has been around, 1 make per game. And so he's not going to be a threat there. Look, in the NBA, it's all about spacing. And you can't say that they are a team that's very good at that, adept at that right now. Now, I do look, I think Butler's going to help with those non-Steph Curry minutes that this team has historically struggled with. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, who was acquired earlier, shipped out 3 or 4 teams later, I think he winds up in Detroit. Uh, his he was not the answer there. Like I admire the swing that they took. It was the right move at the time. Schroeder was playing great in Brooklyn, but since he came over from the Nets, his shooting percentages have cratered. He wasn't helping in those non-Curry minutes. It just wasn't working. So pulling the shoot on that made some sense. But I don't know. I mean, I don't look at the Butler addition as saying, forget the Oklahoma City tier, the one they're on by themselves. But does this even put them in that, mix with the middle of the pack teams in the Western Conference, the Lakers, the Denver Nuggets, Memphis, Houston? I don't think so. I mean, unless Jimmy Butler comes out there and is, lights out and looks reinvigorated, which he might, and unless their defense gets a lot better, I just don't. I don't see it.
I don't either. And again, I think that they did something they needed to do, which was invigorate this last part of Steph's career. Because, by the way, the number of titles Steph has racked up there, the MVPs, the experience of getting to play for one team your entire career, the way the community loves him, and the way he is going to stay there for the rest of his career, unlike, oh, I don't know, Luka Doncic. The idea that he's going to have all that and have this last part of his career still feel somewhat competitive and somewhat fun and not like the Warriors are drowning in no man's land. I think all of that is a win. Not every team is going to win all the time. Not every team can be a title contender every year. Steph has won his titles. He's proven himself as a top 10 player of all time. I think this is a nice way to end his career, assuming all goes well and calm and happy with Jimmy Butler, which is always a question, but in this case, I think it will be. Then, I think they got a lot of what they needed without being a title contender again, which I'm not sure was on the table for them.
Yeah, and it's good that they kept Jonathan Kuminga out of the deal. They kept Brandon Pajemski out of the deal. They kept Moses Moody out of the deal. So they kept their young talent on the roster, either for a deal down the line or just rebuilding at some point. So that was good. So, but they're mildly improved in my opinion with Jimmy Butler. For Miami, it's just glad they're just glad that it's over, right? Like they're ready to move on now. They've got the team around them, that want to be there. The Wiggins is a good player. Like, he's kind of come around this year. He's back to being that 3-and-D guy, shooting 38%, from three, and he's durable once again. So like they're getting a guy that's going to contribute for them, probably be a starter with them. So that makes some sense. His contract runs beyond the 26th season when they want to have their books clean, but I wouldn't be surprised if they can move off that contract in the next year or so if they really want to clean up those books. They got Davion Mitchell out of this deal in one of those roundabout, reroutes there. And I think Mitchell, who played pretty well with Toronto as of late, I think he's the kind of defensive-minded guy that should play, minutes in Miami. But it's really all about kind of cutting the cord. You get a first-round pick out of it in the future. You put yourself in position to maybe make a deal down the line. That makes sense. But big win for Jimmy Butler. That's what it comes down to. Huge win for Jimmy Butler in this situation.